Hi guys, in this video I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics and favorite pastimes, which is traveling. As some of you might know, I do travel a lot because my wife's from the US and I'm from Australia and moved to the US now, so we travel regularly. So this is a topic that's a little bit close to my heart as well. The good news is travel has become very inexpensive, as most of us know, because the price of fuel has come down, and also the planes have become more efficient with better materials, better engines, etc. So it's costing us less, which is great. We're traveling more. But with that also comes certain dangers or health issues which have increased, which I'm not sure if most people are aware of. There was a lot of things which I was aware of, but so many things which I wasn't. So I'm going to share some of these in this video. So I'm going to put a little PowerPoint up there and then also share an email later on with more information which anybody can have access to. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to have a look at is why flying increases the risk of cancer. As I'm going to show in this presentation with some statistics, some people might know or might not know, is that pilots, cabin crew, have the highest rates of cancer in the world. And there's a few reasons for this, but not just cancer. I want to have a look at also other health concerns associated with flying, and more importantly, what can we do to reduce these from happening? Okay, so the first one, which is a huge problem, is cosmic radiation. I knew a little bit about it, but I never knew how serious it is. And you can have a look in some of the videos, even in this playlist, and you can see people with actual meters measuring the radiation. So it gets more and more and more as we go higher and higher. And as we know, the air or atmosphere around this Earth has been designed to, it protects us from a lot of that radiation. We still get a little bit, but not as much as when we're up in higher levels. And it's interesting because NASA's aware of this, and if you go online, you'll read one of the space missions at the moment is going to Mars, but they're very concerned because it's going to take a few years for the pilots to get to Mars and back, and they're worried about the radiation frying up their brains and also their bodies, what it's going to do to them for that period of time, because they've done some experiments in animals and they can see it does cause problems and damage to the cells. So again, not too much detail there. You can research into more, but we are very aware of it, and you'll see some of the information in more detail as I go through this presentation. The other thing that's increased, guys, and we've got to be aware of, is the X-rays and the scanners. As we know, since 9/11, there's a lot more security, and that's good, you know, better to be safe than sorry, as they say. But of course, radiation causes, you know, more problems on our body. It's a cumulative damage, you know, and it's just going to get worse and worse. But what we haven't thought about as well, recently, there's internet and Wi-Fi now, which is on planes. And most of us would know that, you know, even one instrument can cause so much damage, and we've got to keep it away from our kids and our bodies as much as possible. But can you imagine on a plane with, you know, 400 people and, you know, even half or even a quarter on the internet? You know, that makes the radiation levels even more, okay? And that's the, I mean, it's good in a way because, you know, especially when you're flying and you're business people, you want to be able to do some work while you're on the planes, and, you know, even kids these days, you know, keep them entertained, etc. Okay, but there are some detrimental effects to that as well. Okay, one thing most people will not know about, which I learned recently, is bleed air. The air we're breathing in the planes is contaminated. Okay, and I'm going to talk more about this during the presentation. And the other thing is also, which I learned more, is pesticides and chemicals. We spray a lot of pesticides and chemicals on planes now for various reasons, which I'm going to talk about. Again, increase mainly in diseases, but I'll go into more detail. And, you know, so we need to do that because there's pros and cons, but we are getting more chemicals, and these are the reasons why all those health concerns have gone up. And the other thing now is viruses have mutated. They're a lot stronger, as you probably have read, than what they were years ago. And even antibiotics now, some, you know, can't can't protect us against these viruses. And the worst thing is, you go on a vacation to have fun and catch a cold or flu, right? Because think about it, what are we doing? We're breathing the same air in the plane. So you've got 400 people and one person's got a disease, it's going to go through everybody on that plane. So you've got to build your immune system, strong as possible to be able to protect ourselves from these diseases. Okay, so let's get started. So we go into more detail in each one of these issues and what you need to know about radiation when you fly. Okay, flying itself, as it says, brings us closer to cosmic rays with less protection from the atmosphere. The intensity of cosmic radiation may be 100 times greater flying than on the ground. And again, you can watch one of the videos in the playlist where it actually shows us the radiation in Chernobyl, which we all know Chernobyl, it's pretty bad. People will not be able to inhabit that for hundreds of years to come, and you're only allowed there for a certain amount of time because the radiation is high. There's people that walk around with meters in Chernobyl, and when you look at the difference, and this really, really surprised me, the levels in high altitude are higher than the radiation in Chernobyl. And we're in the planes for hours and hours. Really interesting video. You'd watch it. It's in the playlist. You see it there. And like it says, it increases when we fly based on factors such as the plane's altitude, the plane's proximity to the poles of the Earth, the length of the flight, and the presence of solar flares. A polar crossing saves a lot of fuel costs, but increased radiation. So basically, when we fly over the poles, the magnetic fields, as some people know, on the poles is much, much stronger. So we get, obviously more damage. So why do they go over the poles? Because it's shorter paths to a certain destination in many cases. And as I was reading, on one single flight, planes can save between $35,000 or even $50,000 on fuel. Okay, so of course they're taking those routes. Solar flares, as it says here, we can't control that because the sun gives off these solar flares every so often. We can't predict that, and that's high levels of radiation, and they know about that. You'll encounter them at certain times, but lower down ground on the Earth, obviously there's more atmosphere and it does protect us more than being up in a plane. The worst thing is being up in a plane and one of these solar flares. I heard they're working on machinery, hopefully in the future, to be able to detect us. So just so we know now, there's nothing that can protect us from solar radiation. There's nothing. And that's what the astronauts, and they're worried about if they're going to be traveling these longer distances. It goes through metal, etc. So there's nothing that we can do to protect us, or any barriers, I should say. But there are some things you can do which can protect your body, which I'll share in a moment. So is any of this really an issue? Absolutely. In the US, flight crews, including pilots and attendants, are classified as having jobs with occupational exposure to ionizing radiation. So they're aware of this. Pilots with years of flying experience have been shown to have increased chromosomal damage. So they know it affects your chromosomes, your DNA. Now, they're saying, oh yeah, but it's not that bad. Think about it. They're not going to admit to it fully because otherwise there's going to be a lot of suing, isn't there? From pilots and cabin crew, which are developing things like cancer, etc. So they're saying there is some, but it's not that bad. Okay, so again, but this should say a lot too. Recommendations have also been made to consider frequent flyers at an occupational risk if flying over 100,000 miles a year. So not just pilots now, they're even frequent flyers. They're talking about, making it, an occupational risk, as it says here. Okay, so again, people are aware, and in today's world, with the cheap flights, people are doing that. People that love to travel, or even people that are traveling for business, they're doing those miles as well. Okay, so is there proof of all this? Lots of studies, guys. You can research yourself. I've just put some of the better studies out there, and most people know about Harvard research. It's pretty good. And this is one of the studies where they began studying flight attendants' health for more than a decade ago, and they launched the Harvard Flight Attendant Health Study. It's a really good one, which I've got on that email, which you can research more. But basically, flight attendants had a high prevalence of every cancer that was examined, okay? And the findings, as it says, are striking, given the low rates of overweight and smoking in the study population. So they studied the healthiest population, people that didn't smoke or weren't overweight, which, as we know, smoking and also being overweight increases your risk of cancer. So that says a lot. So what causes this? Okay, now flight attendants are exposed, as it says, to several known and probable cancer risks, including, as I said before, cosmic ionizing radiation, but also disrupted sleep cycles and circadian rhythms. I won't go into that too much, but that's when you don't, we have a sleep cycle. So when you disrupt that, it can cause a lot of problems, including cancer, etc. On the email that I'm going to provide later, for if anybody does part of a cabin crew or fly, it can give you more information because I haven't got time to go into everything. But it's also chemical contaminants which add to this, which I will talk about a little bit more. Moreover, cabin crews are exposed to the largest effective annual ionizing radiation dose relative to all other US radiation workers because of both their exposure to and lack of protection from cosmic radiation. Okay, so that was really striking and interesting to me, that they are the largest group so that have radiation than any other group. So that told me a lot. And even the World Health Organization, Agency for Research on Cancer, says that ionizing radiation causes cancer in humans. Okay, so this is a great video to share with people that not only fly a lot, but especially cabin crew and pilots as well. So the main thing, because like I said, it's not about what's happening. We can't avoid that. And we're going to fly because we love traveling. But can anything be done to limit the damage from the radiation exposure? That was the main reason why I did this video. And there's lots of studies, guys, and all the research that I've searched out there. If anybody can find anything different, you're welcome to put in the comments or bring it to our attention. There's nothing except nutrition-wise that people can do. And this is a good study. A study of 82 veteran pilots measured chromosomal damage and correlated the results with dietary questionnaires. Researchers found that eating foods loaded with antioxidants such as fruits, vegetables, especially citrus, etc., were associated with much less chromosomal damage. So, those that have followed the science know that, free radicals, it's what causes, inflammation and diseases. And of course, radiation causes more free radicals. So the only thing that they found, and they've proven with studies that can decrease that, is high levels of nutrition. When I talk about high levels, good quality. So as it says here, consider a good quality, high pharmaceutical grade antioxidant vitamin. And this is one of the reasons why, and a great study, and I chose this one because it was really interesting, plus it was a very reputable person, and you'll see why. It's Dr. Kera Prasad, and he's an expert in radiation safety in Denver. He was contacted by the US after 9/11 to develop a supplement to protect troops if a dirty bomb were to be used. In other words, radiation, right? So thankfully, as it says, this doesn't happen, but his research in animals and humans showed that taking a combination of good quality antioxidants and vitamins reduce radiation damage. By taking them before flying, the data also showed reduced oxidative damage, increased immune function, and protection from DNA damage was very impressive. Okay, so that's pretty cool because it not only protects from radiation, but all those other things we talked about, the immune system, disease, etc. It helps with everything. Okay, so that was a really good study. I found this interesting as well, so I put it up here in the slide, is not only does it cause disease, but it also causes aging, okay? And a good example of people that fly a lot, apart from cabin crew, is presidents, right? As soon as they get pregnant, they fly a lot between, they're always traveling, as we know. That's why they've got their own planes. And it's easy to take pictures of them before and keep a record of presidency and after. So what I did is I put them up here. And as you can see, look at Bill Clinton. And this is only in 8 years, guys. As you can see before and after. We can see Bush Sr. and Jr. You can see they both spent 8 years in there. There's Jimmy Carter here. You can see what's happening in 8 years. And, of course, the latest one, Obama, in 8 years. Now, of course, they have a lot of stress as well, right? Because that aids in free radicals and aging as well. Okay, but a combination of a lot of travel and stress, etc. This is what it does, and this is just the outside effects. What's happening outside the body? What we can see. Imagine all the stuff that's happening inside their bodies as well. Okay, like diseases, etc. So I found that pretty interesting. The next one that I wanted to talk about was bleed air and how toxic it is. Okay, so what is bleed air? Let's take a look. Basically, it's contaminated air which is coming in through the engines through a fault that they did with the planes, where the oil leaks from the propellers, which the oil's been designed to lubricate the propellers, and it comes in with the air that we breathe. This article will explain a little bit about the airline industry has long denied this existence of this aerotoxic syndrome, despite consistent reports of pilots, flight attendants, and passengers being hospitalized for falling ill or experiencing ongoing symptoms related to these events. Some have even died. Aerotoxic syndrome can occur when the cabin air, which is bled in from the engines to pressurize it, is compromised. This bleed air can be contaminated with heated engine oil fumes that contain hazardous chemicals which crews and passengers breathe and may also absorb through the skin. Okay, that's what I was talking about. Now, there's a whole video on this in this playlist if you want to see exactly how it all works and how the seals are and when it happens. But this has been happening, guys. If you look up this aerotoxic syndrome, it's everywhere on the internet, and people are trying to sue the companies, and of course they're going to deny it because they don't want to be sued. Is this happening? It's happening everywhere, guys. You'll see so many instances. This is just one study. According to the 2014 report from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, passengers and crew on Australian aircraft were exposed to toxic fumes more than 1,000 times over the 5 years leading up to the report. The investigation found that in several cases, crew performed forced landings because of the fumes, but routinely passengers were never warned of the dangers. Okay, so you see reports where there's smoke that goes in the cabins and they've landed. There's been funny smells as well. People have been vomiting, and as you'll see later on, pilots that have had serious issues later on even died. They found these chemicals even in their bodies when they did some autopsies. So we know it's there, and I'll show you why, the proof in a moment. And here's another interesting fact, which again, I've got this on a link. You can read the full article. EasyJet, which is a company, is to fit filters to its cabin air systems to stop the toxic fumes reaching the passengers. They've admitted to this. Cabin crews and to the pilots. It's the first time the aviation industry has admitted health concerns about the so-called aerotoxic syndrome. The condition is feared to be responsible for the deaths of pilots and crew and hundreds of incidents in which pilots have fallen outside the controls. This is the first company that's doing something at the moment. You read, they're looking at designs for new, for the planes. But again, it all takes money, and I'll show you why. Because this is the flaw, guys. This is how the air comes into our cabins. It comes through the engines, and again, if you want more detail, watch the video, because it's pressurized, it comes through here. And it's a good concept. Where do we get clean air from? Outside high altitude. It's supposed to be clean. It's just within here, like I said before, there's some oil which was supposed to be sealed, which was lubricated, which, you know, goes at temperatures, as you'll see, over about 450 degrees Celsius, which obviously burns and becomes fumes, and it's been escaping through those seals. Now, to redesign this, guys, it's a lot of money. As you might have watched in some of my previous presentations, when I spoke about aeroplanes and something else, the engines are designed to last for at least 15, 20 years of flying time. So that could be 30, 40 years in our lifetime before they get changed. So it's a lot of money to change this, but, you know, health comes first. So what's happening is it's going through this engine into the cabin because they assumed it was going to be clean air. We breathe it, and then some is released, as it says here, number 3, some air is released, and then it goes into a filter and is recirculated. But they did this after, because they assume we breathe it first, and if there's anything, then they filter it. Okay, so all this oil and all this is coming through the cabin. Now, is it really coming through? Well, there's lots of instances, like I said, where people have got sick and people have even had the plane. But here's proof. An analysis conducted by German airline Condor revealed that 19% of swabs of the aircraft interiors tested positive for this chemical, TCP, tricrystal, whatever, phosphate. So in other words, when they swabbed the interior of the plane, they found these oil substances on the plane. So if they're on the plane, how much has gotten through our lungs first, right? It makes sense. And like I said before, they found it in pilots, when they did some autopsies in their bodies. This chemical is in there, okay? Now, the aircraft, the planes, the airlines, I should say, they're saying, no, don't worry about it. It's safe. There's nothing wrong with it. But the actual producers of the oils, the manufacturers, as you can see here, they're saying it's toxic. And this is on their label on the back. So it's black and white to me. It says causes skin irritation, suspected of causing cancer, harmful to aquatic life, avoid release to the environment, wear protective clothing, eye protection, seek medical advice. I mean, come on. It's there. It is dangerous. We're not allowed to touch it, let alone be breathing it, right? So, again, to me, it's pretty plain. Now, symptoms include fatigue, blurred vision, nausea, breathing difficulties, headache, memory loss, convulsions, tremors, and cognitive impairment, which includes the inability to carry out routine tasks. Not a skill you want your pilot to lose, right? I'm laughing, but that's how, I mean, this is dangerous. But like I said before, they didn't do it on purpose. It's a flaw in the design, but imagine having to change all the planes, the systems now, the engine. It's a lot of money. But you will see the planes in the future, you know, the next generation planes, which I don't know, it could take 20, 30 years, 50, will be doing something about this. And it appears like it says our bodies don't all respond to these chemicals, organophosphate, in the same way. Dr. Mikkel Mulder, a medical doctor specializing in aviation medicine, puts it down to basic biochemistry. It depends on the individual's liver and its ability to detoxify and deal with these chemicals. And again, that's stuff that I've been talking about as well, which I've explained. It's your liver is designed to detoxify or protect your body, but it needs these substances, these vitamins and minerals. If you look, and again, if you've sat through some seminars, which I have on the liver, there's different chambers in there, and you need different chemicals which break it up and then pass it out of your body. And that before it goes into your bloodstream or your brain, and then gets to your brain and all their organs as well. So that's the only protection we have at the moment until they change this system. Okay. Now, there's one exception to this bleed air system, and that's the Boeing 787, as it says, Dreamliner. It's the first with no bleed system. The intakes that duct air into the cabin are located well away from the engines, with no possibility of that air being contaminated by burnt oil from the aircraft's own engines. So if you ever have a choice where you can, the 787 Dreamliner, not sure where that goes, you might want to consider that, because at least you won't get that oil. But you will get the pesticides and chemicals sprayed on all flights. As it says here, airline passengers should be aware that poisonous chemicals are now being sprayed on planes regularly during the flight, while travelers inside the plane, or before people board the plane. And there's reasons why. I'm not against it. You'll see why. But we have to be aware of that. So that's why you notice, you know, the people on planes, the ladies or the men, you know, there with the spray cans. You know, I always thought that was deodorant. You know, people have been on the plane for a while, and you know, sometimes, you know, we need the deodorant. But it's not. It's pesticides, probably with a combination of smells as well to cover it. Or what they do is they spray the plane before you go on. And it's interesting because a friend of mine who's been a mechanic and engineer on planes now for over 20 years told me, yeah, they spray something on the planes, and we're not allowed on there for an hour. So we usually work on the outside of the plane first before we go inside. I think about it, even an hour, it's, you know, not going to dry now, and the chemicals are there. We're breathing them. And some people might say, well, wait a second, we get pesticides in other areas of spray. Yeah, but we're not on a plane confined in that area with that same air circulating all around and spraying it as much as they do on just about every trip they go back and forth. Okay, there's higher levels. Okay, so this process is being referred to as disinsection, a word that seems to have been made up by the airline industry. Disinsection, or the spraying of an insecticide or pesticide on planes, is now permitted under international law. The Department of Transportation says that the spray is intended to protect public health, crops, agriculture, and the environment, which I don't totally disagree with. There's a lot of viruses now. We've heard about the mosquitoes with the Zika virus and other things which should be transferred and come from one country to another, and insects. So, you know, fair enough. And the International Civil Aviation Organization, the World Health Organization, admit that aircrafts are being sprayed with what they're calling a fast-acting insecticide with patches on board right before takeoff, or some airlines are instead treating it. So they're all admitted. I mean, it's there. It's black and white. But these toxin chemicals are all being applied direct to the internal surfaces, and to make matters worse, passengers breathe this crap into their lungs the whole flight. We cannot avoid that. It makes me wonder, that's why probably some people know about this, and you know, they wear the masks on their face for the whole trip. I thought, you know, overreacting, but it's probably for the chemicals and also maybe the viruses as well. Okay, I suppose they're not that crazy after all, right? So as it says here, those with a pre-existing health condition or compromised immune system are even more at risk for suffering unwanted health benefits. So again, we talk about having your immune system as strong as possible. That's the only protection that I can think of at the moment. So are there serious health issues reported from toxic pesticide and insecticide sprayed on planes? Absolutely. Let's have a look. Many airline passengers are already reporting negative health effects from exposure to toxic chemicals on flights. For example, flu-like symptoms, sinus, rash, hives, headaches, swollen joints, and even more seriously like respiratory problems. Anaphylactic shock have even occurred. Chronic issues affecting neurological and immune systems have been reported. The most common aircraft pesticides used in aeroplanes are synthetic pyrethroids, specifically, etc. Remember, they kill insects by attacking their nervous system. Okay, so what are these chemicals doing to human nervous systems? It's not a surprise. Numerous studies have linked them to Parkinson's disease because that's attacking our nervous system. And again, there's other studies where they've shown that in animals it affected their cognitive function. So again, I'll supply more information there for you. So I'll just stop that share. So guys, you know, I hope you enjoyed this information. What I'm also, if anybody wants more information on this, as you saw, I try to go through as quick as I could. I've got an email, and I'll share that with you now, because if anybody wants it, I'll put my email address up there. As I said, you can see it's got my email address. If anybody wants this, jim.gribbles@gmail.com, in case you haven't got it. And I took some time to put all this information in an email, which you can share with anybody. But it has some extra links on top. It even has, as you can see here, a Facebook support group. And this is a Qantas support group. Again, they're aware of a cancer support group because there's so many instances, like I said before, of cancer. So you might be able to get some extra information if you know somebody, because obviously these people have researched more into it and they'll be able to provide a bit more, or just be there for support as well. So that's available if you want to have a look at that. A lot of these links I talked about before about the Harvard research, if you want to research more, all the way down to some links to the videos, which are also on the playlist there about Chernobyl. You should really watch the one with Chernobyl and the difference in the radiation on the plane compared to Chernobyl, how the plane was more. And the other video actually shows you, I like it too, because it shows the different levels as he's going up higher into the atmosphere. It was 47 times more radiation when he got to the third. So again, if you're interested in that sort of stuff, it's all here. And of course, all that other stuff I talked about in chemicals. But I will show you just quickly this site, because I really recommend this site for anybody that flies a lot, especially pilots, cabin crew, or regular flyers. You know, it's really, really cool. So I'll just share that with you. This is the site here. I highly recommend it. And as you can see, it's the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So it's a really good site, and it's basically more for, as it says, air crew, so they can get more information. So feel free to share anybody that you think will benefit, or even the general person. But it talks about the cabin air quality, cancer, which I spoke about, and more about the circadian rhythm disruption, which I talked about before, because they don't, you know, regular sleep. More about the diseases which can be spread, cosmic radiation, which I'm on here. But there's other stuff too, like skeletal disorders as well, which I haven't had time to cover. You see, flight attendant and people flying, they're not out in the sun as much. They don't get things like vitamin D, which we know helps with the bone mass, it helps with the immune system, helps with cancer and all this other stuff as well. Even, you know, depression, anxiety, all that sort of stuff. So even other things about noise and hearing loss, again, nothing to do with nutrition, but they do have, you know, all the noise on the plane. So there's a lot of extra information which will help, you know, people exposed to pesticides, reproductive, etc. Okay, so really cool site. Feel free to share that. Okay, so Hope you enjoyed that video. I love traveling. I mean, we're not going to stop traveling, as I said before. The great news is, you know, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But it's good to be aware of, you know, the things that we need to protect ourselves from. Okay, so we can live a long, healthier life and enjoy all these beautiful things we have on this earth. Okay, so look after yourself and your health, and see you on the next video. Thanks for watching again.